Video games as an addiction. Video games as a means with which to get an addiction. Video games, a term with which to become addicted to by with the games of the video variety. It's actually kind of a depressing topic, and I'm going to warn you against that now, but I'm going to try to make it fun. There may be a dancing monkey later, we will see. I am not a Aldrich. I am a novelist, I am a serialist, I am a writer of general pursuits, mostly where I talk about geek chic topics when I'm writing nonfiction. And when I'm writing fiction, I write generally action-oriented style stories because stories that have sword in the title and then don't end in a WrestleMania quality fight are lying to you, and you don't need that kind of negativity in your life. So, yes. Any questions so far? No, good, fantastic. Okay. Real quick, just to break the ice, we're going to go around the room. Yes, you have to participate. Yes, there will be a quiz. What is your favorite video game? They couldn't hear you.
Final Fantasy VII.
Excellent. He said Zardian. What about you? Not paying attention? What about you? What are you? The Legend of the Dragoon. Excellent. That's a hipster answer if I ever heard one. What about you? Wow. The Legend of the Dragoon is not that scary a question. Go ahead. Oblivion Elder Scroll. Nice. What about you? League of Legends. Mischief Makers. Never heard of it. You. Excellent. Wonderful answer. What about you, sir?
Fully modified Skyrim.
Interesting. Favorite video game? Go fast. Yes. I couldn't hear you, so I'm going to assume you said Zardian. What about you? Favorite video game? She said Zardian. What about you? Favorite video game? Good answer. And nice with a quick response. Favorite video game, sir? Resident Evil 4. I promise I'm getting to you guys eventually, but people keep coming in, and naturally new people take precedence. So, they're talking to one another. Favorite video game? Ted? Nice. Favorite video game? I'm starting to detect a trend. Favorite video game? Elder Scrolls. Favorite video game? Good. You didn't just copy off his answer, did you? Okay, good. Excellent. Favorite video game? Soul Calibur. She said Zardian. Favorite video game? Near. Near what? Excellent. Good answer. That's very likely. Favorite video game? Excellent. He said Zardian again. Favorite video game? Contra. All right, there we go. You like to go for powered killing machines. Favorite video game? Shovel Knight. You horrible, horrible person. You kick puppies. Favorite video game? You are so wrong. It is a terrible, terrible game. Favorite video game? Batman. I don't know what you said, and I don't want to assume Zardian again, so I'm going to go with Run Saber. Favorite video game? Like 3 people have heard of that game. Favorite video game?
Secret of Monkey Island.
Nice! Excellent, good answer. You're busy. Favorite video game?
I beat Super Mario 64 5 times.
You beat what?
Super Mario 64 5 times. So
Excellent! Good answer. And you really like stars. Favorite video game?
Sword of Mana.
Excellent. Favorite video game?
Diablo 2.
Good. And now what about the brain slug?
Fire Emblem.
There you go. Favorite video game?
Fire Emblem.
Good answer. You way in the back. I don't hear what you said, so I'm going to assume Zardian. Okay. We are going to be talking about video games as a means with which to get addicted, as an addictive substance-ish sort of thing in a digital kind of cyberspace, William Gibson sort of way. I'm going to be picking on Transformers Legends. How many of you have played Transformers Legends? Statistically speaking, at least 19 of you are alive, but we'll go with it. So, how many of you played a digital collectible card game? Excellent, that's a little bit more honest. Transformers Legends, I'm going to refer to my notes on my new iPad. By new, I mean I already broke it 19 times.
That's pretty new.
What?
That's pretty new.
Transformers Legends is a really, really great game. It is a... I did it again, so it's 20 times now. It's an electronic card game where you have cards on various levels that pit against other players or against the computer in various weekly events. Because it's Transformers, and you all are familiar with Transformers, don't play that game. You have the robot mode and the vehicle mode. And so you can level up your cards to make the stats work a little bit better. So a max level card can be a lot more powerful than a minimal level card. Level 1 cards are not as good as level 2, etc. Right? All on board? It's really fun, beautiful And they've got this neat, almost kind of lenticular sort of thing happening. So when you twist the screen, the card kind of moves a little bit. It's really cool. Really impressive stuff. Every week on like Wednesday through Sunday or something, Sunday, Monday, they have weekly events that are 5 days. There are 3 types of weekly events. There's where you play against other players and try to get the highest score. There's where you're on a team of like 30 people playing against a team of another 30 people, and whichever team gets the most points in a 24-hour period wins, and they go on and face another team. And then there are these neat events where you can fight cards, and if you get 4 cards, you can combine them, kind of like with 2 here, where they can get even more powerful. Neat stuff, very kind of in keeping with the spirit of Transformers, a lot of fun. It's a good, solid game. Transformers Legends is an absolutely horrible, terrible, terrible game. All combat is creative control, where the only real decision is whether or not to enter into combat. You can arrange your deck in certain ways, but you don't really control who does what, when cards use their special power, how their special power is used, who it's used on, anything like that. It's all statistics, it's all probability, it's all random chance decided by the computer. There's even a skip button to completely bypass all combat. One of the problems that is presented is there is a tremendous power creep issue within the game. You have Optimus Prime. This is, I think, the first level 5 Optimus Prime card. And you see the attack down here, 6,900. The max stat is 44,000. That's if you max out the card to its absolute potential. Here is another Optimus Prime card. This is the base stat. It's almost twice as powerful. It's more than twice as powerful as the previous card. When they bring out new cards for every weekly event, it has to be a little bit stronger than last week's card. In and of itself, it's not a big deal. You know, different cards have different power or whatnot. But when you've been playing for 6 months or a year, suddenly your level 5 cards that you busted your ass to win are now not as powerful as level 4 cards they're handing out as consolation prizes. The reason why I'm picking on Transformers Legends is because this is how I got addicted. And I kind of hesitant, I shudder to use that term because we kind of associate addiction only with the most harsh and severe forms of addiction. When you think about drug addiction, alcoholism, things like that. The reality is addiction can be very, very nefarious, and it can be more subtle, but it's nonetheless the case. I played Transformers Legends for about 3 months. And the first month I didn't spend any money. The last 2 months, I spent over $500. And it wasn't a deliberate decision. It wasn't a conscious, here's $500 I'm giving to them. It was $10 here, $15 there, a little in-game, in-app purchases. One of the frustrating things about it was if I paid that kind of money and got the kick-ass card, I might be a little bit less accusatory towards it. If I got it and bought the entire Transformers deck, like I went out and bought all the magic cards there were in a given deck, that might be one thing. But even if I had used that money and won flat out, the next week all of that money from a game standpoint would be eroded. And it would continue to be eroded. What was the kicker for me was actually watching Shadow of the Vampire. How many of you have seen this movie? Excellent, and that's why it was such a major Hollywood blockbuster. You really need to check out. This is a really, really good movie, especially if you're into classic vampire stories. It's a lot better than the trailers make it seem. Willem Dafoe does an amazing job. John Malkovich is completely throwaway and contributes nothing to the film, but that's another matter entirely. If you're not familiar with the movie, it's essentially a highly fictionalized telling of how Nosferatu, thank you. I keep wanting to say Count Dracula. Nosferatu was filmed, the old silent horror movie, and the premise being that the director found an actual vampire to play Count Orlok. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous movie with a lot of scenery. And at the time, I thought, man, that'd be really fun. Go to Romania, go to Transylvania, go to some of these places, beautiful places. You get this, bed and breakfast over the whole event. And as I was watching the movie, I thought, but they're not going to have internet access. I'm not going to be able to play Transformers Legends regularly like I am. And that's when it hit. Yes, I know, it's kind of pathetic, it's kind of sad a little bit, but it's true. It took watching this movie to realize that I was rather willing to play this game than go out and see this view. I would rather stay home and play this video game that I have on my iPad than go and enjoy the countryside of Romania. Not that I really afford it for vacation, but might be happy to dream. That's where the addiction was realizing not just that I had spent this money, but realizing that I hadn't really gained anything from spending this money. And not in a dismissive, the digital stuff isn't real kind of system. But it helped me to understand what was happening. It helped me make me aware. And again, we think of addiction, we think of these dark horror stories, we think of leaving Las Vegas and others. There's a lot of different levels of addiction, and it is a deliberate blindness to think only the worst addiction matters, to think only the worst addiction is real addiction. One of the things that's kind of interesting is that society is largely still figuring out how addiction works. We don't really have the greatest grasp of what addiction is. We have a basic understanding of the biochemistry involved. We have a basic understanding of the behavioral systems that are involved, but we cannot clearly pinpoint what is addictive, what is not, who will get addictive, who will not. We're still unraveling all of that. For a long time, we thought that addiction was simply the body and the mind's pleasure centers getting overclocked. We thought cocaine just basically made your brain run faster and process better for a brief period of time, and you just kind of wore out for it. We're learning now that it isn't that way. There's more to addiction than just, this stuff's really, really good, and so we like it. What we've been discovering is that addiction is a little bit more nefarious, and it is due to a terrible, frightening chemical called dopamine. How many of you understand what dopamine is? Oh, wow, okay. That was really my next problem. This is really fascinating to study because I suffer from very serious depression, which, thanks to healthcare systems that I don't want to get into, I have to go untreated on. And so studying dopamine, serotonin, all that stuff is really, really fun. And when you suffer from depression, one of the prevailing theories about depression is that your body can't take up dopamine, that your body doesn't process it properly. And so I'm used to thinking of dopamine as this golden substance that can make my brain work properly. In reality, dopamine in very small doses does make the brain work properly. But in large doses, it warps and erodes the brain. There have been comparisons between high levels of dopamine and high levels of sugar, and how sugar will completely warp the body's ability to taste and process food. All of the studies into obesity and how sugar in our food and sugar supplements warp our taste buds, warp our body's ability to process when it's full and when it's not full. Dopamine does basically the same thing to the brain. And I lost my notes. Don't panic, I got them. Dopamine, when it's released, gives us the sense of euphoria, the happiness, the joy, and all of that. The problem is that as dopamine is entered into the system, it begins warping and remapping the body, remapping the brain, so that it not only associates feeling good and feeling happy with a trigger, with a reaction, but blocking dopamine's uptake from other triggers. If you have three things you enjoy horseback riding, playing the guitar, and succotash because you're weird. And you get addicted to horseback riding. Shut up. Just as an example. The dopamine release that you experience with horseback riding, I see a couple of you already snickering. Let's not carry this too far. Dopamine not only will only trigger when you're horseback riding, it also will not trigger when you're playing the guitar and when you're eating succotash. You could be riding on a horse, eating succotash, and if you become so addicted to horseback riding, the succotash will be completely ancillary. This also has a tendency to transition from liking to the need. The dopamine, your brain becomes resistant to dopamine very much the same way that you have the blood barrier of the brain against alcohol. You become resistant to dopamine. You can only get the dopamine from the other thing, so you have to go after that thing in greater numbers. This is where the resistance plays. This is increased tolerance. That's what I'm looking for. This increased tolerance is what makes you have to play more and have to do more. This is where the danger of the games come in. Because playing Transformers Legends, I was content to just get the cards, and if I did okay in the weekly event, great. If I did poorly, maybe next week. But if I do great, fantastic. The addiction playing into effect was what transitioned me from playing hardcore to paying money and playing hardcore, and then paying a lot of money and playing hardcore. By playing hardcore, I mean I was waking up in the middle of the night to play this game, because you can only play for a certain amount of time in one go without obviously having to play and use the recharge and whatnot. So I figured out there's this long stretch of time when I'm asleep that I'm not playing. So when I wake up in the middle of the night, I get up and play. That's what we're talking about here when I mean playing hardcore. I mean doing a chore at home, playing the game, getting up and doing something else, and going back and playing the game. That's the situation. And that's the increased tolerance. Suddenly, playing the game wasn't enough. I needed to get the level 5 cards, level 6 cards. They brought up level 7, and I nearly had a connection. What the hell? And then there was the matter of getting the cards, and then leveling them up became exponentially more costly and expensive. If you know what I'm referring to in the game, you can appreciate how frustrating it was. If you don't know what I'm referring to, it's not worth finding out. It's a game what I realized. The psychologist Eric Hoffman said it best, that addiction isn't about what you do, meaning horseback riding versus like that versus guitar or anything. It's about what you don't do as a replacement for the addictive behavior. The addictive behavior takes over everything else in life. And it starts small, it starts simple. But the game was taking over my chores. The game was taking over my sleep. The game was taking up. I, for a couple of weeks, was spending more on the game than I was on food. Damn it. Do we have any questions so far? Nope? Okay. So how does this play games? The free-to-play model that is becoming the industry standard. And we are seeing Elder Scrolls just recently switch to a free-to-play system. With one of their games. Other games are coming out. Free-to-play games are almost unlimited at this point, just on the App Store. The best example of free-to-play game is called a Skinner's Box. How many of you know what this is? Crap. People are educated. That's not fair. We used to anime cons when I'm dealing with braver kids. That's not fair. In this Skinner's Box, the rat learns to press levers to accomplish various things. The $5 term is operant conditioning. The rat has a lever to eat food. The rat has a lever to turn on light. The rat has a lever to fill water. The rat has a lever to stop the floor from being electrified. And I don't depend on how sadistic this particular psychologist is. The way free-to-play games work, and a lot of video games, free-to-play, I'm taking on free-to-play because it deserves it. But free-to-play isn't the only modality in which this is implemented, but it is the most obvious, it is the most overt. I feel like I should change my tone. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. Alright. In free-to-play games, the game offers you valueless prizes. And the Skinner's Box example would be the food pellet, where you use for turning on the light. And what you do is you have these valueless prizes that take time, skill, or money to get. And in this case, it's a level 1 card. I got more graphics than I know what to do with, literally. Now, these aren't completely useless. You use them to power up other cards. Power up your level 5 card, you cannibalize the level 1 cards. And if you stop and think about that in the context of Transformers, it's kind of terrifying. Because your level 5 optimal prime is basically eating level 1 graphic. It's scary, but pretty down to go. So you got underpowered cards, level 1 cards by the dozens, by the hundreds, and you could use them to power up your other cards. This is what you would normally get. This was your reward for pressing your button in the game. And at first, these cards always come. They're very easy to get, especially at the beginning of the weekly event, when you first start playing the game. Because when you first start playing the game, you've got 1 or 2 level 3 cards, a bunch of level 2 cards, and a lot of level 1s. Taking the level 1 card to max out the level 3 card is pretty easy. It takes like 90, 100 cards or something. To max out the level 5 card takes like 300, 400. To max out the level 6 card takes like 1,000. And so you need to collect more of these, even though in a lot of ways they're nothing but fodder for raising up the other cards. On top of that, you also have the introduction of variable rewards, character elements of gameplay that the player cannot predict. In this case, you had a thing in the Transformers game, Space Bridges, where you could activate the Space Bridge to get a card. You didn't know what card it was going to be. You didn't know if it was going to be good, bad, great. You did know that the free card was always a level 1, level 2, maybe level 3. But the card, the Space Bridge you paid $2 for, well, that was guaranteed to be level 4, or it might be level 5, or it could be level 6. And they handed these things out like candy at the beginning of every event. And players would post on the forum, I got 3 level 6 cards on the first day out. Whee! But it became unpredictable. And so naturally, you are conditioned to chase after these variable scenarios to the best of your ability as often as you can and as frequently as you can. And this is where you also, the other problem is they start eliminating stopping points. This is real nefarious stuff. The idea being that the weekly events, for example, where you fight a whole bunch of monsters, you fight a whole bunch of bad guys. Day 1, if you fight a bad guy, you get 200 points, and that gets you up to level 3, and you get all these space bridges. Day 2, you fight a bad guy, and you get 1,000 points, but you only get 1 space bridge. So you get more bad guys to get the same number of space bridges you got earlier. Day 3, you've got to fight a bad guy and get you 1,000 points, but it takes 3 bad guys to get 1 space bridge. So to maintain the output you were getting from the first day, you've got to kill so many more bad guys. All of this gameplay is more time you're spent plugged in pressing the buttons. And the more time you're plugged into that game, the more time I guarantee you are going to contemplate dropping $10 to buy a level 5 card. But except when that's here, you don't know for a fact you're going to get a level 5 card. You think you will. The game tells you, oh, it's very likely that it might happen. But you don't know. So you drop the money, level 3. We'll try it again next time. One of the things that was really frustrating is they had a Space Bridge program where you could get one of, I think, 100 cards. Like 50 of them were level 3. 20 of them were level 4. 10 of them were level 5. And one of them was level 6. I know that doesn't add up to 100. This is a random example. And if you paid $50, you would get 25 random cards. And they guaranteed that if you got, one card that wasn't one of the level 6s, you wouldn't get that card again. So that means in order to guarantee that you would get the level 6 card, you had to drop $100 to get the level 6 card. And remember, that level 6 card will be 1 to 5% less powerful than next week's card. It will be half as powerful as next year's card. Keep losing my notes. Why do you guys keep letting that happen? For fun.
I love smiling because you're like, yep, it's my fault.
You also, going back to this point, you also miss out if you stop playing in the middle of an event. Some events, the rewards are clearly laid out. You get to this point, you get this kind of stuff. But a lot of the events have this tier. Win 1 day, you get level 5 card. Win 2 days, you get 2 level 5 cards. Win 3 days, you get 2 level 5 cards and a weapon. Win 4 days, you get 2 level 5 cards and 2 weapons. Win 5 days, level 6 card. Win all 6 days, 2 level 6 cards. And so, if you're at all committed to the game, which at this point you are going to do everything in your power to win all these days. And if you lose a day, you are going to be committed to not losing more. Because you're going to try to salvage the situation to at least get out the level 6 card. This is psychology applied to commercialism, plain and simple. I've already talked about the power creep a little bit earlier. I keep mentioning throughout because it is one of the most frustrating things. It would be one thing if you bought a level 6 card and bam, suddenly you were at a new plateau in the game that you were really going to be able to excel from here on out. But the fact that they were releasing level 4 cards more powerful than last year's level 6 cards is a testament to how they were constantly creeping forward, constantly eroding at the progress you were seeing in the game you were playing at, you were working hard at, you were spending a lot of cash on. Now, it's really easy for me to sit here and say all this stuff about how bad this is. How does this stack up to regular game? Because how is this that different from Super Mario Brothers, where level 1-1 is really, really easy. It's a hell of a lot easier than level 8-3. So how is this different? And the answer is, in regular game, the enjoyment comes from getting better at the event. You enjoyed level 1 so much, you wanted to get to level 2. And by getting to the point where you can get to level 2, your skills improve. You enjoyed competing against the event, and it was learning the skill of playing the game for which you're deriving this enjoyment. It's too early to mention my job. The better you perform, the more fun you have. The better at the game you are, the more you will enjoy it until you reach total mastery. And even then, at that point, there may be a nostalgia element for going back and playing it years later, Mr. Conro. This is from crack.com. They were saying, what would games be like if they were made in different eras? This is chess made today. Imagine having you get to make 3 moves. Laugh all you want, that's really not a bad game. Modern games, free-to-play games, do not trigger the reward sensation from gameplay. They trigger with collecting and accumulating. Our inherent psychological need to have one of everything, to have the entire collection, to have all the G.I. Joes, to have all the Transformers, to have all of My Little Ponies. I see some people laughing, but I guarantee you, when you were 8 years old and you were at McDonald's, you looked at that little display case and were like, I want all 8 of those. And I look around and I know some of you are 38 and you still think the exact same way. God bless you for it. That impulse, that need to have all 8 of those little McDonald's toys has not gone away. You have better control over it because you're an adult. But it's still there inside of you. And these games are designed explicitly to exploit that. They trigger reward from a sense of having and accumulating rather than gameplay, and they draw out the accumulation. You are delighted when you hit the point that you have 1/20th of all the cards in the game. But the effort it takes to go from 1/20th to 1/10th is exponential. And from 1/10th to 1/5 of all the cards in the game is, again, much, much harder, costs so much more in time, in energy, and in money. And all the time, you are becoming more and more dependent upon the game, and you are developing a resistance to it at the same time, and it is getting harder and harder to move up closer to having all the cards. To this end, these aren't so much games as they are digital obsessions. These are exploitations. These are cheat codes in capitalism, in consumerism, trying to get the gamer to play as little as possible and yet become as addicted as possible. In many ways, you aren't enjoying the experience so much as avoiding the withdrawal or the sense of failure. You stop playing the game because it's fun, and you now have to play it because you don't want to feel like you're losing. You don't want to feel like you're sliding behind. That is addiction. Now, so we talked about free-to-play, we talked about how it works and how it exploits operant conditioning to be a successful business model. Is it working? So a wonderful question. In 2013, free-to-play games netted, not gross, netted about $3.6 billion. That's with a B. That constituted approximately 20% of the entire gaming industry. That's 1/5 of all money made in video games came from free-to-play games. That number is expected to increase, again, exponentially. If you don't know what exponentially is, I'll remind you of the old math puzzle your math teacher liked to pull on you. It was like, I'll give you $10,000 now, or I'll give you a penny today, and I'll give you double that penny tomorrow, and then double that the next day for 30 days. Which one do you take? That scam? That's exponential. That sounded really condescending now that I realize that. Really want that. I've been thinking about that puzzle a lot recently because I'm broke. Kind of broke in. My math teacher always said, what if somebody offers you money? Is there somebody going around doing that? Is there like a lottery I can sign up? Like the old movie about the black box, where it's like, there's this black box, you'll be paid $1 million, and press the button, but somebody will die. He wouldn't get to the end of that damn sentence. But only one? Hell. I know such a big probability. 3 people have died in a car accident. We had this discussion. If only one person died, I was saving a life. Oh, right. A large part of what makes the free-to-play industry so nefarious is what's called enforced scarcity. This kind of fits near and dear to me because as an author, by the way, I'm selling books at the marketplace if anyone wants to get on this. Enforced scarcity is something that really hits home because enforced scarcity is the idea that, okay, so I wrote a book. It's a wonderful book and an amazing book. It's worth $14. You should totally come by and pick one up in the marketplace. But I wrote the book and I used a digital tool to use it. I wrote it on Word. So I wrote the book and I got it edited and I got it, prettied up and everything else. I can give that book to every man, woman, and child upon the earth, literally. The cost of producing a digital copy of that book reaches zero. Because all I have to do is copy and paste it 7.5 billion times. Every man, woman, and child can have their copy. Now, obviously, that's going to represent a problem for me if I want to, pay the light bill. But that's what enforced scarcity is. It is the idea that there are only a certain number of a digital thing for which we can literally produce as many as we wish. Transformers, the Legends card game, could give every player every single card in the entire game from the outset. And they don't do it because kind of the point of the game is collecting and working for it and playing it. And that's not necessarily nefarious. In fact, in a lot of ways, that's what makes art still a viable career option. But this is a reality that video games, especially free-to-play games, digital games, don't want to really acknowledge, is the fact that they can give you everything right from the outset. This is part of why while games like Minecraft are so popular, because you pay money for Minecraft, but you get all of Minecraft. This is also where many people are becoming frustrated with major games, AAA games, and the DLC situation, where you cannot pay money to get the entire game. You pay money, get the game, and then 6 months from now, there's more game to get, usually that costs extra money. Not a lot, a couple of dollars, but how much of a problem is a couple of dollars? Well, if they're releasing DLC every 3 months for 3 years, that gets expensive fast, yes?
That would be like time saver unlock DLC to buy.
Exactly, yeah. You're very much right. They're starting to get to that point where it's like, if you want to play the game, that's fine, here it is, you can play it. But if you want an ammo drop when you really need it, that's 30 cents. Yes?
Do you think with the DLC release schedules causing some people to just wait for the entire game to be fully released and be like, all right, well, I'm waiting a year from now, that's for the collector's edition, perhaps all the DLC out there?
I think they will continue to produce DLC for a game until literally nobody cares about it. The Phantasy Star Online servers were running until like 2 years ago, and that game's from 1998. They will, if it's making any money at all, they will keep producing. Yes.
Isn't that catch-22? There's games that don't get DLCs that die. They die really fast.
Minecraft.
That's true.
Yeah,
Basically, Minecraft's community has significantly decreased.
Oh, And if, like I said, if AAA game came out and said, here it is, nothing else, it wouldn't go off the shelves.
StarCraft's an example I was thinking.
Yep. I mean, the fans are not entirely non-culpable in this situation. They have helped to push this forward. But yes.
DLC isn't really inherently bad in the fact that back when the Elder Scrolls Morrowind was a thing,
Yeah.
you know, you got expansion, but they came after, like you got an actual full game, and then they worked on another significant section later on that you could buy, that, you know, let you kind of keep playing the game you enjoy.
Right.
But if you the main part was still a full game.
Yeah.
Nowadays we're getting things where it's not.
So you're getting launch day DLC.
Yeah.
You're getting launch day edition. And in some ways, that's good. In some ways, DLC helps to extend the life of the game. And if you're a programmer and you've spent the last 3 years of your life trying to make this the best game you can, you want to see it get some shelf life. You want to see it get some mileage. DLC is not bad. You're completely right on that. But the way it is implemented, the way it is used, and the way it has become a crutch, the way it has become almost a crutch for additional money making is something to draw attention to. Yes.
Well, isn't it also about the AAA games that are essentially a linear experience as well as a rather strict narrative? You mentioned Minecraft. Minecraft is kind of the opposite of that.
Right.
It's non-linear, which barely has a narrative. It has a narrative at the end, pretty much, and that's it.
Yeah.
So the reason that Minecraft is able to gain such popularity is because people create their own creativity.
Yes and no. And part of that comes from, I'm going to use an absolutely terrible example, and it's actually from a game that I researched heavily last year, and I am going to stick to my guns, but this was research, this was not fooling around. And that is a game called, I'm going to regret this, 3D Sex Villa. It was for the History of Adult Gaming panel last year, which was a very highly regarded panel, I would like to say. And we really, me and my partner Charles Margolis wanted to throw it up there, do it again this year because it was so well regarded. I'm sorry, you can only play so many smart video games and call it research before it legitimately becomes research. The reality is that game is very much like what you're talking about, Minecraft. It's an open-ended experience. It has a strong user base, but they still have free-to-play elements to it. If you want certain things, and no, I'm not going to tell you what things to add into the gameplay, you have to pay for it. And so the type of narrative at play, I think, is a very different discussion. The free-to-play elements are ultimately coming down to, does the gameplay experience require additional monetary input? And that's where the question seems to be coming from. And that seems to be where you're getting this abuse of the operant condition. Yes?
Speaking to the science side of things,
You have to speak up.
speaking to the science side of things,
Yeah.
there's a heavy genetic component to what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, no. I'm disregarding that because we don't know how that plays in because the congenital aspects of addiction are usually stimulus specific. Some people will be prone to alcoholism but not drug abuse. Some people will be prone to nymphomania, which is not what they show you in porn movies. It's actually a really horrible affliction. I have a friend who has nymphomania, and it ain't fun. And so it becomes stimulus specific as to what people will have a weakness to. But no, you're completely right. We don't know what about video games will trigger.
It's usually it's the number of dopamine repeats.
Right, but we don't know what will trigger that.
Exactly, and that is stimulus specific.
Yeah.
But as a person who used to throw rats in the box, yeah,
I'll break your soul.
thank you. We literally tested them with cocaine. That was the trick.
How do you guys get funding for that?
Department of Defense.
There we go. Okay, I'm sorry, keep going.
Yeah. But that's what it is. It's give them as kind of cocaine, and you can literally just tie it back to the genetics. And there's always going to be some outliers.
Right.
That you can throw them on an Excel spreadsheet and go, oh, that one's got that many repeats. That one, not so many.
Right. but we don't have, but like, to go back to what you were saying, we don't know what the stimulus is with video games. And even to the type of video games, you can have two collectible card games. One person may have absolutely not get addicted at all to the game with tanks, but I'm a sucker. I hook, line, and sinker in Transformers. I saw Transformers Legends. There was no turning back for me. You have no idea how hard it was to delete that game. Moving on. Another major problem is that the free-to-play games are almost entirely digital. Very, very few games are sold with any type of hard-level component. So there's a commitment through your device. Free-to-play games are almost entirely exclusive, which means there's no standalone component. There's no chance for me to pick up Transformers Legends and play Transformers Legends by myself. I am playing against other players. I am playing against other people, but almost invariably not the people in the room. Remember, I love finding these pictures. I Google like multiplayer then and now, and a lot of people have relations with this. That multiplayer used to be you and three friends, or four friends and one last to sit out, get together and play a game. Now multiplayer is, I'll call you when I get home and we'll set up on Xbox Live or PlayStation Network.
Or let's go to a convention and play together.
There you go. But even then, you're still you're not playing together on the same machine. You're not playing with 4 NES pads. You're not playing with 4 PlayStation 2 components. What? Say again? 2 weeks ago. Okay, come on. Alright. Ultimately, what this comes back to is you're not interacting with other players. You're not interacting with other people. You are interacting with the company. You are interacting with the people who both control the game and whom you are playing against. When was the last time you ever heard of that working out for the players? Vegas has the best turnaround for that kind of scenario. And how well does Vegas pay out? So, there is a little bit of exaggerated concern here, a little bit of, oh no, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Society is not in danger of falling apart because of free-to-play games. We haven't seen children gone unfed because of free-to-play games yet. We haven't seen marriages end yet. I'm very uncomfortable with the non-committal noise you guys are making. I really don't like where that's going. Like, I haven't seen my son in 2 months. I think I left him in the room. What? Yeah, that's true. World of Warcraft is straddling that line. World of Warcraft, I don't know if that's quite free to play or not. I guess it kind of does qualify at this point with the amount of DLC and the amount of in-game purchases.
Well, they just added free play to it.
Oh, did they? Okay, well, okay, they're across the Rubicon. All right. My point is, because I had a personal experience with it, I feel like I'm coming down on it really hard, and I've been singling out one game, which really isn't fair, but damn it, people, $500 in 2 months. Getting them to play in the middle of the night, that's scary shit. But at the same time, anytime a new form of art has come along, anytime there's been a new form of technology, a new form of communication, there's always been people saying, oh no, the world's going to end. When television came along, people were saying, why would anyone ever leave their home when they've got the television? When theater got started, you can actually read Greek dissertations on why theater is going to destroy society, because it's this make-believe fantasy world that once people can enter into it, why would they ever want to return to reality? Theater! So every time this happens, you're always going to have the people who say, no. You're going to keep losing markets. Well, why does it happen? It doesn't seem like it's a consistent timeline. You're always going to have people that say this. I mean, even Pac-Man. People were saying that video games are going to become an addictive substance. Video games are. I'm not sure that Pac-Man may not have been a trial run for free to play. No, that's not fair. If you got to play for one life and then had to pay for additional lives, that would probably be closer to free to play. But anyway, that's not fair assessment. I have no suggested course of action here. I've got no idea about kind of what to do. Like several people have said, free-to-play games are successful because they're popular and because they're fun. But Doritos are goddamn delicious. And if you feed those to a child 3 times a day, protective services will take that kid away. What I'm also thinking back to is the idea that we need some clarity, we need some recognition of what is going on here, and people need to be aware of how much they're being manipulated. If they know they're being manipulated and want to go forward with it, that's fine. I watch pro wrestling. I'm not about to throw stones here. But this is an area where psychology is being employed to completely exploit cheat codes in human delight and human enjoyment. It is being used with which to create addiction. That is a terrifying thing. So like I said, I don't really have a suggestion on how to handle this. This is an industry issue, something the industry has to take care of. And it's a part of us as a part of that industry, but we have to make our voices known. If free-to-play games stop making money, there would be a new game developed. There would be a new approach developed. But we need to be aware of the fact that we are seeing deliberate manipulation of addictive factors at play here. And I remind you that there's a reason AA meetings can be found in every city, in every country around the globe. Multiple AA meetings, probably tables for a reason. Addiction is scary, and its deliberate exploitation is nefarious. Yes?
I'm not saying that they're not addicted, but is it not true that there are some free-to-play games that, like, while yes, addictive and are hard to stop playing, have done positive things?
Oh yeah, no. I'm not saying free-to-play is bad. I'm saying they are doing bad things. Whether you want to balance it with the good things, that's another matter. Whether you think that they can scale back certain elements, that's fine. You're totally right. I'm not trying to just rote say they are evil. They are just doing bad things. How bad, how deliberately bad, that's up for speculation. But we cannot, there is no question, they are directly employing behavioral psychology to make money off of their consumers. Now, some people might argue that they're making money off their consumers and they're using behavioral psychology to produce a better product. And that kind of laissez-faire entertainment, there's an argument for that. I can't deny that. I want you to love my book so much that you buy it. So, you have to balance the paranoia with the reality of maybe this is just really good and effective use of knowledge. But we still need to be aware of what's happening, and we as an industry, not just the community of players, but the entire industry needs to be aware and acknowledge this is what's happening. This is just a call to awareness, not a course of action. The industry as a whole needs to decide on the course of action. Do we have any other questions? Yes?
So, do you have any recommendations for individuals on?
Yes, to leave your games. either buy games that you play flat out, but that would be about the only thing. Like I've got Final Fantasy Dimensions on my computer because I bought it. And there is a definitive beginning, middle, and end. If it doesn't have an end point, don't play it. Because the odds are is that it is designed to keep you coming back. Tetris is a wonderful exception. Tetris, you don't have to, you get 100 blocks and you want 100 more, that's going to cost you some extra. Yet. No. Oh my Lord. Really? That hurts me right here. Oh my word. No! Tetris? Man, that was the Winnie the Pooh of video games. Somebody, yes,
I don't think you caught your name.
You didn't catch my name? An attention whore like me? I'm Robert Aldrich. I'm a novelist and serialist. You can find me on my website, teachthesky.com, that's teachthesky.com. And I'm also downstairs in the merchant's room. Yes, ma'am. Very likely. Oh, hey! I work as a CTR. Yeah. that for me personally, recognizing that I'm playing an addictive game, I clearly have, like you were pointing out a little bit earlier, I have some inclination towards addiction, if nothing but by virtue from coming from a depressive background. If the game doesn't have a definitive ending, I don't play it, because I feel like I can't. And let me tell you, that's made it so much easier to turn my friends down about playing WoW. Yes?
There's a guy who recently, I think it was on NPR, the guy who's on the program, he was talking about a similar addiction. Free-to-play kind of addiction. And it messes with like it's no longer what is it? When you're the primary user of the computer. Yeah, it's no longer the admin computer. His wife has all the codes. There's a massive power switch that automatically shuts off all those. Like this guy is knocking himself out. That's ultimately beyond kind of way of doing things, but like on the edge, like that you realize you have a problem.
Yeah, there really isn't, so long as you're not hurting yourself or others, there really isn't an extreme you can't be prepared to go to deal with addiction. Addiction is really bad stuff. You had a question from your addiction. Yes, and I disagree that that's a hard and fast evidence, but I would agree if they're constantly releasing new maps, there would be kind of a question of how it's implemented, because that's not necessarily undoing the progress you've gotten with other things, but then I start getting into less evaluating the psychological impact of more as being a sour puss because I suck at Transformers Legends, and so I have to acknowledge that component as well.
I also just want to say I agree with our connections. Really issues there, so I definitely see that.
I want to believe there's something. Yes.
So I feel like one a game that uses a free-play model actually tries to have me in psychology of addiction. Do you ever? Because it's sort of like most of the playability is based on personal skill. You can buy cards, sure, for like a shortcut, but you can also win them.
Right.
It doesn't even take that long to win them.
Again, a very terrible example, but I wish I had the defensive academic research to say, but otherwise it's just kind of a nerd. It's the WWE card game, if that was that way, there really wasn't the benefit to spending money like there was in Transformers Legends. If you just played enough and were good enough, you would eventually get really great cards. Paying money was a shortcut, and that game was a lot better. That was just kind of, I just got bored of that because, John Cena didn't win like he does in the real WWE. Yes?
How do you determine, I guess, one thing to look at for, community addiction, because there's a lot of numbers, because obviously, you can't, it's difficult in the study, but, I guess, how do you determine the difference between, shortcuts, like the WWE, who pay for the shortcut, in WWE games, versus the Transformers game you're talking about, where they're paying, if you're just examining as a whole the amount of people that pay for video games, how do you determine which ones are addicts, and which ones are just looking for a quick shortcut because they're waiting?
That's a very good question. I would say that it's not the pain of the money that's the critical matter, but going back to what Hoffman said, Eric Hoffman, that it's what you're giving up to keep playing. What keeps bringing you back? If you've got $100 and you're just dropping in the game because you're driving across the country buying ice cream and throwing half of it away, that's great. Good, more power to you. But if you're giving up stuff to play the game, that's the addiction, not the spending the money. Spending the money is the symptom, not the problem. I mean, it is if you make an author's salary. But, yes.
I learned recently that there's a correlation between addiction or being prone to addiction and social isolation. I don't know if you've heard about this.
Yes, I read that same article. I think I know the one you're talking about. Maybe. I have no idea how that plays into here, but I'm sure it does. But yes, I read that too. That's fascinating stuff. To piggyback on that, I had a friend of mine who was a behavioral psychologist who took issue with the Skinner's box comparison. because there's the old myth that the dog that had the orgasm machine in its head, that the dog had this little pedal they could press and it would trigger an orgasm in its brain, and it would press the pedal until it died. It would give up eating and everything else. That was a real experiment. They really did that because people are horrible. What they've never done to duplicate it is to whether or not the dog could press the pedal in an environment that was stimulating. The dog always had a cage, about as big as the table here. There was nothing to do but eat, sleep, and press the pedal. If it was in, Doggy Disney World and had other dogs to play with, and there was somebody there with a rope and would scratch its belly, would it continue to press the pedal? We don't know. And there's a school of behavioral psychology that says probably not. I mean, it would definitely press the pedal because orgasms are great, but it wouldn't press the pedal to death because it would have other stimulants. So that theory has been invented before, and it's a very compelling theory. Because I definitely had a harder time playing Transformers Legends when I was at conventions. The problem is I was still leaving the convention. When I would have 15 minutes between panels or something, I would whip it out. I would take out my iPad. No, that's still a horrible choice of words. But you get what I'm saying. The element of addiction that we're ultimately getting at is what is being given up to play the game. But the social element as a neutralizer to addiction is a very compelling idea. We've got time for a couple more questions. Yes?
I came a little late. I didn't hear the topic of the book. Is this the topic?
This is not the topic of the book. My book, this is a discussion about video games as a addictive variable. My book is about a bunch of idiots who break into an abandoned military facility, so what could possibly go wrong with that plan? The book is a Cyberpunk Haunted House Tale. It's available for sale on Amazon as an ebook or down in the merchant's room, and I'll be here all week. My website is ctysky.com. Yeah. I've got 5 minutes. Okay, we got time for about 19 more questions. Yes?
What about the idea of Transformers Legends being an actual example of gambling with time as currency, and if you want to, and money being bought time?
That is an excellent scenario, and it makes me cry about as much as learning about divorces on iTunes. That terrifies me. There was one, yes, you sir.
Do you think it's important to draw a distinction between addiction caused by chemical substances and addiction caused by psychological stimuli?
Would I draw a distinction?
Do you think that's an important distinction?
Only so much as identifying the diversity of addiction. I am not a psychologist, nor am I even an armchair psychologist. I'm a writer, which means I basically make stuff up. But my experience with that really was not going to say it. My experience is just to acknowledge that addiction is varied and diverse. I don't think there are types of addiction, meaning that people have, level 30 addiction versus level 60 addiction. The addiction might be stimulated by different things, substance abuse, alcoholism, whatever, but the addiction is still pretty uniform, I believe, would be my inclination. Yes?
In all your research, did you find anybody who's actually trying to research this yet?
Plenty of people. Most people can't get funded. I found sorry. Because the people they get funding from are video game companies. Most, and my research scientists here can back me up or completely call shenanigans, most research is about 5 to 20 years behind the industry. It's definitely that way in fitness. The fitness industry is now testing concepts Arnold Schwarzenegger was using when he was lifting.
I can understand it for so long because a lot of studies have to study a long time period.
Yeah. We have to study a long period of time. People, you're dealing with comorbidities, a lot of other factors at play and also remember that in order for a study to really be valid, it has to be duplicated. Boy, is that just an easy thing to do. Okay, one more question. Who wants it? Really? Nobody? Yes.
How did you decide to stop playing this game?
How did I decide to stop playing this game? I mentioned that earlier. You were here for the whole panel, jerk.
I missed like the first 2 minutes. I'm sorry, Robert.
It came from watching Interview with the Vampire. and realizing I would rather play the game than go see beautiful Romania.
You did mention that, and I.
Okay, well, all right, fine. You failed the test. But anyway, all right.
I have a replacement.
You do have a replacement?
Yeah, I've played Fallout 3 for like 7 days out of the past 2 months. Do you think I should be worried?
Well, that game ends, so.
I got you, Tom.
Doesn't
Only because you're playing Fallout 3.
Really? I guess I'm saying I spent $9 on that game and have gotten 7 days worth of enjoyment. I don't know if I should be ecstatic or terrible.
That was a handshake, bro. All right, we got to close up, guys. I want to thank you so very much for coming to the panel. I appreciate it. And I believe in the same room where I'll be talking about video game weapons as characterization. I promise it will be more upbeat than this. And I'm down in the Neelix room. My name is Robert B. Aldrich. I'm here promoting my new book, Rest for the Wicked. My website is teachthesky.com.